Let's talk about some specific diseases. For example, Candida. Candida is a primitive microorganism. Surrounded with oxygen, what happens to it since it's an anaerobe? Allergies, same thing. Allergies are irritants in the body. They're toxins that have built up and built up. So that just one more toxin coming in, your specific allergy, creates a histamine reaction and off you go. You cycle off into that. I've talked to people that were one of these bubble boy type of things where they can't go to the mall, they can't smell perfume, there's all kinds of places they couldn't go because of the environmental sensitive. Well, after getting about 6 months of ozone therapy, injection therapy, this woman says she was perfectly healthy and can go anywhere now because the ozone cleaned out all the toxins that were triggering the allergic reactions. There's just so many: asthma, fatigue, common colds and flu, heart attack, stroke victims, lungs, kidney, liver, blood, pancreatitis, diabetes, sickle cell, stomach ulcers, viral illnesses. All these things doctors have told me they commonly treat with ozone therapy. Viruses are anaerobes, just like bacteria, just like funguses and other pathogens. They're anaerobes. They cannot live in oxygen. Now, when somebody's getting therapy, let's say they're an AIDS patient and they're getting ozone therapy, commonly you'll see their viral load start to drop and just keep on dropping. I see that all the time. I've seen people that have shown me their medical tests showing that they're HIV negative. I've seen everything you can think of. Why? Because they're anaerobes. Again, anaerobes, whatever's causing these diseases. It's all primitive microorganisms. What are the crown jewels of health? What I did was I went around to all the doctors all over the world and I said, hey, what worked best? What's the best thing you use in therapy? What have you seen that works on the most people most of the time? And I got specific answers. And I came up to about 7 major categories. And I call these my 7 crown jewels of health, trademark. And the first one is oxygen. Well, of course, I've just gone on forever about why oxygen is so good in the human body. The second one is minerals. Now, the minerals have to be from plants. The whole point of eating is when you take a plant and you chew it up, it delivers minerals into the body. You are made of minerals. That's what this body is minerals. An accretion of minerals. That's how you grow. If you take a little seedling and you put it in a plant, a little pot, you plant it in a pot, then watch it grow. As it gets bigger and bigger and turns into this huge thing, you find that the dirt level in the pot goes down. Well, did you ever think about it? Where did this plant come from? It just didn't magically appear out of the air. It was the minerals in the dirt that were eaten by the plant, digested, and used by the plant to create itself. We're the same thing, except being rooted into the ground, we're carrying this digestive system around with us. This digestive system runs on oxygen. If it becomes filled with anaerobes, then you get like the yeast infections, that sort of thing. Once you get into the aerobic side, back into the colon, the beneficial, the Lactobacillus acidophilus, these things that are aerobic, they love oxygen, they will overpower the anaerobes. We've seen this over and over and over. So the minerals are important because it's what we're made of. It's what our bodies and our immune system is made of. Now the problem is all the soils in this country have been used up for many, many years, and it now takes, maybe hundreds of platefuls of a vegetable to equal the same nutritive value that one plateful had 40, 50 years ago. So mineral supplementation is very important. In fact, I developed a product called OxyEarth specifically to do that. Minerals from plants mixed with MSM, remember the sulfur's not in the plants, that's another one of the minerals, and vitamin C to make it all absorbable. So I've been doing what I can to answer these problems. Number 3 crown jewel is water. Nobody's getting enough water. I already told you about that, dehydrated people. You're supposed to drink probably around 7 bottles of water. 7, going to the store and get a little bottle of water, about 7 of those a day. If you're not, you're probably dehydrated. Look at your urine, very simple. If your urine is dark and smelly, you're dehydrated. If your urine is coming out very light, you're probably getting enough water. So it's very important to look at that. Your body will tell you. You have your own little indicator there. Enzymes. Well, enzymes are what the nature has put into food so we can digest it. For example, when you cut an apple open, it turns brown because the enzymes in the apple turn it brown because they're trying to digest it. So nature has packaged in the apple its own complement of enzymes so we can eat it and we can get the nutritive value from it. If you don't have the enzymes in the apple because you've irradiated it, you've grown it too quickly, you've stuffed it full of chemicals, whatever, it's going to be pretty, it's going to sit on the shelf, and that's what a lot of food does these days. It's pretty and it sits there, but you try to digest it, it's not happening. So all this undigested food particles basically gets into your blood, gets into your lymph, gets into your fluids within your body, and then you have a situation where that's a great place for bacteria, viruses, fungus, and pathogens to come in and just eat. They have a feast because it's undigested food. So they come in and live off all this waste. So it's very important for you to get plenty of water and enzymes. Now, of course, the other end, the colon. The colon has to be clean. Periodically, you should go to a colonic therapist or do one of the home ozonating, oxygenating cleansers such as, like the Homozone or the Colosan or some of the other new products that are coming out. What these things do is they put oxygen directly into the colon. When you do that, all the putrefied waste matter that's impacted on the walls of the cells gets flushed out, flushed out, flushed out, flushed out. It comes out of your body. So if you're putting it in this end, it's got to come out that end. If it's blocked up down at that end, you're a swamp in between, aren't you? It comes in here, it goes out there, it has to be a complete cycle through. If the exit is blocked or partially blocked, toxins, let's say partially, it's not wide open, it's partially blocked, you're going to have a buildup of sediment or toxins or sewage within your fluids in your body, creating perfect conditions for the invasion of anaerobes. There's a whole new area coming out with light, sound, magnetics. I think that's going to be a whole new wonderful healing area. Right now it's important, get some sunlight. If you can get sunlight, please get sunlight. You're naturally supposed to be getting sunlight. Try to get sunlight. Now your seventh crown jewel is your emotional, mental, and spiritual balance. So that's all up to you. But the reason I mention it is because of all the studies linking the immune system to depression and to the state of your emotions. If you're depressed, that sends signals from out of your brain to your cells not to burn very brightly, let's say, because it's, woe is me. So when the cells don't burn very brightly, I'm just quickly shortening this up, what you get is you don't get a lot of the electrolysis action out at the site of the mitochondria. So your body's not able to create some of the oxygen and ATP it needs because it doesn't have enough electrical energy. So that's why an emotional, mental, and spiritual balance are important. I've talked to people who have prayed for people and healed themselves. I've talked to people that have entered a conscious oneness with all things state. Instantly his rib healed up. He had a broken rib, x-rays before and after, a friend of mine. So these things are possible in the human being. We just don't know about them. We don't know how everything is all tied together. Everything is linked together. Truly, it is all one. So those are the 7 crown jewels. Now the evidence I have in the book, chapter after chapter, of bottled oxygen, hyperbaric oxygen, oxygenated water, oxy-water, hydrogen peroxide, coke therapy, stabilized oxygen, Genesis, Aerobic 07, fruit acids, oxygen supplements, oxygen elements plus, Oxymune, oxygenating powders, Homozone, Colosan, MSM, Oxy Earth, air ozonation, ozone bagging, ozone injections, Oxymune, ozone rectal insufflation, ozone steam cabinets, ozonated oil, ozonated water. People actually saying, hey, I use this particular thing, wrote to me and said, Ed, I want you to tell people, I'm so grateful that this good thing happened to me. I want you to tell people about it. Other countries, of course, Cuba, Italy, Russia, England, Australia, Czechoslovakia, they're all written up in the book. Canada, they did one study in Canada to try to show that they were being conscientious in studying ozone, but they ruined the study. Let me tell you exactly how they did it. If you want to do a bad study on ozone, it's real simple to make it look bad. You just have to do this. You use too little ozone, too weak a concentration. You treat only a tiny amount of blood with it. Use only 10 cc's, as a matter of fact, instead of the liters that we've been talking about. Treated the blood with a less effective and too low concentration. The ozone was heated first, while heat destroys ozone. Tiny amounts were injected into the muscles, not into the veins. A scant total of only 3 tiny injections. So the study was somebody getting a tiny little bit of heated ozone, and by the way, the machine didn't work all the time, was broken most of the time. So they injected ozone, maybe not, 10 cc's into a muscle, not even into the vein, then said, well, we've studied ozone thoroughly. It doesn't work, obviously. Now, the person that actually printed the study was attacked by all the other people whose names were in the study because he didn't give it to them for review first. He just printed it, and he lied. He actually said things that weren't true about the ozone and dismissed it as worthless, when the other people saw the value it had. Even with that tiny little amount, it was having a lot of good value. You see, ozone even works homeopathically. There's videos. My friend Jeff Rogers has an award-winning documentary on ozone. He's got 2 available. Ozone and the Politics of Medicine is one, and Ozone, a Medical Breakthrough. That's the other one. Oh, it's used in veterinary medicine. I know people winning dog and horse racing competitions by injecting ozone into their animals. There's no drug involved, so nothing shows up in a drug test, but they come back from their run and they're hardly even winded if they've been getting it regularly. They use it in acute mastitis, metritis, and parvovirus. Then we get into the politics. Okay, shouldn't I be rich and famous? Well, Ed, if this is so good, I mean, you've just been standing here for all this time telling us all these wonderful things. Why aren't you rich and famous? Well, let's ask the reverse of that. Who is rich and famous? And do they control the game? Do they control who can get a study done? Do they control the price of admission into the game? Millions, $10 million. Somebody says it takes $10 million to get a drug approved in this country. Who's got $10 million? Of all the ozone practitioners I know driving around in normal cars, living in normal houses, helping people, none of them are these big millionaires. So you won't see it. You're not going to see that kind of thing. It's got to come from the people. In Australia, for example, they tried to do a test in ozone. They went to the Philippines with some AIDS patients. They started getting them really well. They were giving them the recirculatory hemoperfusion, and they were starting to get well. One guy's Kaposi sarcoma was falling off him. Somebody else was able to go out and climb mountains when they came in a wheelchair. And what happened? Well, somebody from somewhere called up the head of the chief of police in the Philippines and said, go raid these people. They've got a quack clinic. And so they busted the doors open, came in with machine guns and shut the clinic down before it could produce the results. And that's the hallmark of whenever you see this. Same thing in Pennsylvania, that happened once at a hospital there. They got excellent results, but they got pressure from other department heads, from the hospital administrators and other people that were told that they'd been threatened with a loss of grants in all other areas if they came out with a study showing that ozone was effective. So these are the politics we're dealing with. There's an entrenched bureaucracy, extremely afraid that anything is going to come along that's better than what they've got, cheaper, more effective, and have no side effects. And of course, we're talking about ozone. What about our cancer clinics, organizations like, the Cancer Society and all these people? Well, when you interview the doctors in Germany who are using the ozone therapies, they come out and they tell you, well, many of the heads of the cancer societies, the heart societies, the MS societies, all these people, they and their families come here for ozone therapy. And then they go home and tell everybody it's worthless. So you see, it's kind of a political red hot potato some places, especially in the United States. As I said, it's not taught in American medical schools yet, proven without a doubt, safe and effective all over the world. What's wrong with this picture? 70 to 85% of all Americans are taking drugs, medications. 70 to 85%. You think it's just you, woe is me, I got to take. No. What's wrong in a society when 70, 85% of the people in the society are taking drugs, medication on a daily basis, and that whole system that they belong to is the major cause of death in this country? The hospitals combined with the correctly prescribed drugs and the doctors and the whole thing in what we call normal medicine. I mean, it's a great industry. If you were a salesman for a drug company, and I interviewed for some drug companies when I first got out of college and didn't know any better. I didn't know this stuff. And they were only hiring the honor students from the best homes, that kind of a thing, because they wanted to have a real squeaky clean image. I remember that, thinking how odd that was. And now I see why they were doing it. Because their drug people have to go in every day. And so every week, a drug rep will come into a doctor's office almost every day and take the whole staff out to lunch and pay for it. And then they send them on trips to the warmer locations during the winter. In medical school, they give them binders and little hand computers and these kind of things. This is all how they get used to being induced by these companies. So they never look at anything else because, hey, Maybe if I start using this other thing, this guy won't take my whole staff out to lunch anymore, won't have the big car in the yard. But you're the one paying for it. The people are the ones paying for it, with the suffering, and the 40% of the seniors declaring bankruptcy for medical reasons. Medicine caused their bankruptcy. And yet it's the #1 killer in this country. This is the politics of what we're facing here. And so what we're seeing is the gasping of a dying dinosaur, trying to discredit ozone, discredit these natural methods. But the American people aren't buying it. Study after study shows that they're fed up with the American medical business as usual system. And they're going to the more alternative methods, and that's where they're going with their dollars. It shows that the Americans are spending non-insurance covered money wholesale on natural methods. I printed a book, O3 versus AIDS, and it was available a few years ago. And what I did was I simply list the chronology of the use of ozone from the 1800s up until the early 90s. It shows, you can see the whole thing and how it's been ignored, how the present system went around destroying all the natural hospitals and the natural doctors in the 20s and 30s, when the oil barons, the railroad barons, put all their money into the pharmaceutical houses and then sent their agents out to destroy these whole therapies. That's how we got stuck with the only system we have. You know, in Europe, in some countries, if you don't tell people with cancer that ozone is an alternative therapy that they may want to look into, you can be cited for malpractice. You must tell about all the methods. It isn't like in this country where chemo, radiation, and surgery, that's it. Anything else is obviously quackery, because if it was any good, we'd know about it. If it was any good, we'd all be using it. Oh, by the way, there's a $1 billion industry here whose rep comes around and feeds me and everybody all week long, but we're not going to tell you about that. So I brought some completely healed AIDS patients to the National Institute of Health in the early 90s. Dr. Anthony Fauci, it was written up in the Washington Post, AIDS Patient Care magazine. Dr. Anthony Fauci sat back, AIDS czar for our country. He put his hands together like this and said, well, we see no reason to pursue this. And I was sitting there with 2 AIDS patients that had turned HIV negative, had their clinical test proving it, had their doctors there to swear that they watched this happen. We see no reason to pursue this. So what did I do? I hit the streets. I started teaching all over the world. Here's 2003. This is me marching in New York City in the AIDS Walk, New York. This was very interesting doing this because there were something like 80,000 people there. We marched around Central Park. You're carrying the banner, oxygenhealth.com. I had volunteers wearing oxygenhealth.com t-shirts. There I am. 80,000 people marched for AIDS awareness in New York City. And the next day in the news, not one newspaper, one radio station, or one television station had anything at all reporting on it. Well, we don't want to scare the tourists away from New York. We don't want to make people think that AIDS is a problem in New York. We depend on that tourist dollar. But word is getting out. Here's one of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Anthony. He's getting injected. This was printed in Rolling Stone magazine, the one with Angelina Jolie on the cover. And he's being injected by his tour nurse. And every time they go out and they do concerts, he's getting injected. Why? Because it gives him energy and keeps his blood clean. He loves it. One of his songs says, "She's leading me to ozone." There's a lot of movie stars silently into these therapies, using these therapies. Household names I can name right now: Cure to Cancer, cured of all kinds of diseases, that won't speak up because they don't want to, have the political liability of being different, and they want to have that He-Man image. How can this rock star be dying of throat cancer? He's perfectly healthy today. Well, there is one guy that stepped up to the plate with me. Ingo Rademacher. You may know him as Jax from General Hospital soap opera. Ingo is a fan of the ozone therapies, and he helped me do the Book Expo America show in Los Angeles. He was not afraid to stand there and say, our society needs this. Bioterrorism, what about these anthrax attacks and all that? Well, anthrax is nothing more than a bacteria in a spore. Well, if you soften the spore with moisture, like if it gets in your body, or if you spray it with water outside the body in the post office, ozone can kill it because it's an anaerobe, can it? active oxygen surrounding an anaerobic bacteria like anthrax, smallpox, West Nile virus. They're all anaerobes. They're all anaerobes. All the stuff that you're being, SARS, all anaerobes. Surrounded with oxygen, they die. 13 states have passed Alternative Medicines Practices Act. And that allows any MD to use anything he wants, theoretically, including ozone therapy, on his patients, as long as it makes sense to him. So there's a movement afoot. There's people out there like myself that have seen how good this stuff is, have seen what it can do, and they're pushing it forward politically. There's resources. In the book you'll see www.oxygenhealth.com. That's my website, oxygenhealth.com. Over 500 medical references you can search through. I have a search engine on there. You can look through 500 medical references, looking for keywords. In the back of the book, you'll see the references from Cuba, for those that speak Spanish. And we're working on a Spanish translation of the book. But page after page in Spanish of the references coming out of Cuba. And they've only been doing it in a few years. Jim Kaplan went down there and showed them how to do it, and they found out for sickle cell anemia, trauma medicine, that sort of thing. It's just excellent. It's inexpensive, effective, no side effects. What do you think, folks? Have I proved my case? Have I made you understand? Have I gotten you to get what I'm saying? I hope I have. Our world needs more help. Our world needs you to do something about this. Not just, so many people come, they're sick, they grab it, they run away. Well, I'm better now, and they do nothing. Others come, they see how it helps them, they go, my God, I've got to tell everybody. You be one of those people. Happy Oxygen.